Most people never lack ability, preparation, or awareness. What they lack is the willingness to place a clear request into the open and accept the outcome without retreat. Life responds to what is stated, not what is implied. Access responds to clarity, but not potential. Movement follows direction, not quiet readiness. The unspoken advantage is not louder confidence or aggressive behavior. It is the disciplined ability to ask for what is wanted without justification, explanation, or emotional insurance. It is knowing that a single well-placed request carries more power than years of silent effort. Waiting to be noticed feels respectable, yet it quietly hands control to randomness and other people's preferences. Refusing to ask preserves comfort, but it also preserves limitation. Nothing rearranges itself around unexpressed intent. Those who shape outcomes understand one principle early. Nothing meaningful happens until a line is crossed verbally and internally. That line is crossed by asking cleanly, directly, and once. This is not about demanding or chasing. This is about precision, restraint, and authority. This is about understanding why those who ask decide direction while others adjust to it. If this book is addressing the part that hesitates to place intent on the table, then let the transformation begin. Chapter 1, The Advantage Most Never Claim. The unspoken advantage is not hidden because it is complex. It remains unclaimed because it requires a level of internal decisiveness most people delay indefinitely. This advantage is the disciplined willingness to place a clear request into the open and accept whatever response follows without retreat, revision, or self-betrayal. Many move through life believing progress is earned primarily through effort, preparation, or quiet consistency. Effort matters, preparation matters, and consistency matters, yet none of these speak on their own. Without a request, effort remains background noise and preparation remains private potential. The world does not respond to readiness. It responds to articulation. What is articulated defines what exists in practical terms, while everything else remains theoretical. This is where the advantage begins to separate outcomes. Those who understand this do not wait to be discovered, interpreted, or inferred. They place intent where it must be acknowledged, even if it is refused. Refusal is not the enemy. Unexpressed intent is. A refusal clarifies boundaries, while unspoken desire leaves direction unresolved and authority external. Most never claim this advantage because asking has been incorrectly associated with weakness. Asking has been framed as dependence rather than definition. This misunderstanding trains capable people to remain indirect while less capable individuals move forward through clarity alone. The advantage does not belong to those who want more. It belongs to those who decide clearly. Decision is what gives a request structure and weight. A request without decision leaks uncertainty. A request grounded in decision communicates finality regardless of outcome. Finality is what environments respond to because finality reduces ambiguity. The advantage is unspoken because it is demonstrated, not explained. Those who practice it are rarely loud about it. They simply receive clearer responses, faster outcomes, and more stable positioning over time. Many assume that if something is deserved, it will arrive eventually. Deserving does not trigger movement. Requesting does. Movement requires a point of contact. A request creates that contact by naming direction explicitly. Without it, progress remains accidental rather than deliberate. This advantage demands internal alignment before external action. Internal alignment means knowing precisely what is wanted, why it is wanted, and what outcome is acceptable if it is refused. Without this alignment, asking becomes negotiation rather than assertion. Negotiation weakens authority when it precedes clarity. Assertion establishes authority because it is complete before response. The advantage is built on this internal completion. Claiming the advantage means accepting responsibility for outcome rather than waiting for permission to proceed. Responsibility is not emotional burden. Responsibility is ownership of direction. Ownership changes how a request lands. It removes hesitation from tone. It removes excess explanation from language. Most never claim this advantage because it removes plausible deniability. Once a request is made clearly, outcomes become traceable to action rather than circumstance. This exposure is avoided more than rejection itself. Avoidance preserves comfort but prevents authority. Authority cannot be granted externally without being demonstrated internally first. The request is the demonstration. The advantage does not require confidence in the traditional sense. Confidence fluctuates. Clarity does not. A clear request made without emotional leakage carries more force than a confident request filled with justification. Justification signals doubt about legitimacy. Legitimacy is established internally, not defended verbally. This is why refinement matters from the beginning. The advantage is not asking loudly. It is asking cleanly. Clean asking means the request stands alone without explanation, persuasion, or emotional cushioning. It means the request can be accepted or refused without destabilizing identity. This stability is what changes how the request is received. Those who ask cleanly do not rush to fill silence or interpret delay. They understand that once a request is placed, the work shifts from speaking to holding position. Holding position is part of the advantage. Most never claim this advantage because holding position feels exposed. Exposure reveals whether authority is real or borrowed from approval. Borrowed authority collapses under uncertainty. The advantage requires self-validation before external response. This self-validation is not affirmation. It is acceptance of consequence. Accepting consequence completes the request internally. Completion removes neediness. Neediness weakens positioning even when the request itself is reasonable. This is why two identical requests can produce different outcomes. One is delivered from internal completion. The other is delivered from unresolved dependence. The advantage lies in this difference. It is invisible, yet decisive. It determines whether a request reshapes circumstances or merely reveals insecurity. Most people attempt to improve their outcomes by improving their appeal. They refine presentation, timing, and tone while leaving the core issue untouched. The core issue is not appeal. It is authority. Authority is not dominance. Authority is coherence between intent and expression. When intent and expression align, resistance decreases naturally. The advantage teaches that asking is not an interruption. It is a clarification. Clarification benefits everyone involved, including those who refuse. Refusal delivered in response to a clear request carries information. Information allows adjustment. Ambiguity provides nothing to work with. Those who never ask remain trapped in interpretation loops. They analyze signals, read into behavior, and guess timing. Guessing replaces action when asking is avoided. The advantage replaces guessing with placement. Placement means intent is placed where it must be addressed. This shifts energy from speculation to response management. Managing responses is easier than managing uncertainty. Uncertainty drains focus because it multiplies possibilities without resolution. Resolution begins the moment a request is made clearly. Many fear that asking will close doors permanently. In reality, indirect behavior closes doors silently by failing to establish relevance. Relevance is created through articulation. The advantage teaches that relevance is not assigned. It is asserted. Assertion does not guarantee acceptance, but it guarantees engagement. Engagement is the gateway to outcome. Without engagement, effort remains isolated. Isolation produces stagnation regardless of capability. Claiming the advantage requires abandoning the fantasy of perfect timing. Timing improves with clarity, not delay. A clear request creates its own timing by forcing response. This does not mean asking impulsively. It means asking decisively once alignment exists. Indecision disguised as patience delays alignment rather than protecting it. The advantage rewards those who understand when alignment has been reached. Alignment does not feel dramatic. It feels resolved. Resolution is quiet. It does not seek reinforcement. It moves directly to expression. This is why refined askers are often mistaken for being unemotional. They are not detached. They are complete. Completion removes urgency from tone. Urgency signals unfinished internal debate. The advantage requires that debate be settled before speaking. Many never claim this advantage because they confuse asking with exposure of desire. In reality, asking exposes decision, not desire. Desire seeks validation. Decision seeks outcome. Outcomes respect decision because decision carries cost. The willingness to bear cost signals seriousness. This seriousness alters how requests are evaluated. The advantage does not eliminate rejection. It eliminates self-doubt as a controlling force. Self-doubt thrives in ambiguity, not clarity. Once clarity is expressed, self-doubt loses leverage. The request has already been made. The line has already been crossed. Crossing that line once changes behavior permanently. It recalibrates identity from observer to participant. Participation reshapes self-respect through action. This is why the advantage compounds. Each clean request strengthens internal authority. Internal authority strengthens future requests. Over time, asking becomes natural rather than forced. It becomes a default response to opportunity rather than a calculated risk. This naturalness is not casual. It is trained. Training occurs through repetition with restraint. Not every situation requires a request. Knowing when not to ask is part of refinement. not avoidance. The advantage does not encourage constant assertion. It encourages precise assertion. Precision preserves authority. Those who ask rarely but clearly carry more weight than those who ask often without structure. Frequency without refinement weakens impact. Refinement concentrates it. This is the standard that must be set early. Asking is not a volume game. It is a positioning discipline. Claiming the advantage means abandoning indirect living permanently. Indirect living defers responsibility to interpretation. Direct asking assumes responsibility immediately. Responsibility is not heavy when it is chosen. It becomes heavy only when avoided. The advantage is choosing it deliberately. This chapter establishes the foundation. The unspoken advantage is not boldness for its own sake. It is the disciplined practice of clarity under consequence. Everything that follows will refine this practice. How requests are formed. When they are placed. When restraint becomes strength. The advantage has now been named. From this point forward, it must be practiced. Chapter 2: Why Outcomes Obey Clear Requests. Outcomes do not move in response to potential. They move in response to definition. What is not defined remains optional, and what remains optional is rarely prioritized. A clear request removes optionality. It establishes a specific point of engagement where response becomes necessary. Without that point, effort circulates without direction, and intention remains abstract. Many misunderstand this dynamic because they assume outcomes reward merit automatically. Merit does not announce itself. Merit must be positioned, and positioning occurs through articulation. Clear requests work because they collapse ambiguity. Ambiguity allows delay, deflection, and reinterpretation. Clarity forces alignment or refusal, both of which move the situation forward. Movement matters more than agreement. Agreement without movement is symbolic. Refusal with clarity provides boundaries that can be navigated or respected. This is why a clear refusal is more useful than passive acceptance. Refusal defines limits. Limits allow strategy. Clear requests invite reality to respond honestly. They remove the protective fog that allows assumptions to linger untested. Testing is not reckless, it is precise. Precision is what separates refined asking from impulsive assertion. A refined request is not rushed. It is complete before it is spoken. Completion means the internal decision has already been made. The request is no longer exploratory. It is declarative. Declarative requests carry weight because they are not searching for reassurance. They are offering clarity in exchange for response. This exchange is what triggers outcome movement. Many believe that politeness or likability drives outcomes. Politeness may ease interaction, but it does not determine direction. Direction is determined by clarity of intent. Clear requests respect other people's time and position. They eliminate guesswork and emotional negotiation. This respect is often mistaken for assertiveness, yet it is structural, not emotional. Structure is what environments respond to most consistently. Emotions fluctuate. Structure endures. A clear request establishes structure by naming what is wanted, what is acceptable, and what follows. Even when consequences are unspoken, they are implied through tone and finality. Finality signals seriousness. Seriousness changes how requests are evaluated. A serious request is not one that sounds intense. It is one that sounds resolved. Resolution communicates that the requester has already considered outcomes. This consideration reduces perceived risk for the responder. Lower perceived risk increases likelihood of engagement. This is not manipulation. It is coherence. Coherence aligns intention, expression, and acceptance of consequence. Outcomes obey coherence because coherence simplifies decision-making. When a request is clear, the responder knows exactly what is being evaluated. Unclear requests create cognitive friction, which often results in delay or dismissal. Delay is not neutral. Delay favors the status quo. Clear requests disrupt the status quo by introducing a decision point. Decision points accelerate outcomes regardless of direction. Even negative outcomes provide closure and information. Information allows recalibration. Recalibration is impossible when requests remain implicit. Implicit desire leaves no data trail. Without data, adjustment becomes guesswork. Clear requests produce feedback. Feedback sharpens future requests. This is how asking becomes refined over time. Many hesitate to ask clearly because they fear appearing rigid. Rigidity is not clarity. Clarity allows flexibility because boundaries are known. Flexibility without boundaries becomes compliance. Boundaries without clarity become aggression. Clear requests balance both. This balance is what gives the unspoken advantage its effectiveness. It is firm without force. It is open without being vague. Outcomes respond to this balance because it reduces emotional noise. Emotional noise clouds evaluation. Clarity clears the signal. A clean signal invites response. A noisy signal invites avoidance. This is why clarity outperforms enthusiasm consistently. Enthusiasm fades. Clarity remains. Outcomes favor what remains. Clear requests also alter self-perception. They reinforce identity as someone who directs rather than hopes. This identity shift compounds over time. Each clear request strengthens internal authority. Internal authority stabilizes future expression. Stability reduces hesitation. Hesitation is not caution. It is unresolved internal negotiation. Resolved negotiation produces decisive language. Language matters because it reflects internal structure. Unstructured thinking produces rambling requests. Structured thinking produces concise ones. Conciseness is not brevity for its own sake. It is the absence of excess. Excess weakens requests by introducing doubt. Doubt invites negotiation when none is needed. Negotiation dilutes authority when it precedes clarity. Clarity should always come first. Once clarity is established, negotiation becomes strategic rather than reactive. Strategic negotiation preserves position. Reactive negotiation erodes it. Outcomes respond differently to these two modes. Strategic negotiation is respected. Reactive negotiation is managed or ignored. Clear requests also set expectations. Expectations guide behavior even before a response is given. This guidance influences outcomes indirectly. When expectations are clear, interactions become efficient. Efficiency builds trust. Trust increases willingness to engage. Trust is not emotional closeness. It is predictability. Clear requests increase predictability. Predictability reduces resistance. Resistance often comes from uncertainty, not disagreement. Clear requests remove uncertainty. This removal shifts the interaction from emotional to practical. Practical interactions move faster. Speed matters in outcome formation. Speed does not mean haste. It means reduced friction. Clarity is the primary friction reducer. Many attempt to reduce friction by softening requests. Softening often introduces vagueness. Vagueness increases friction rather than reducing it. A softened request invites interpretation. Interpretation invites misalignment. Misalignment delays outcome. Clear requests remove the need for interpretation. They say exactly what is meant and nothing else. This precision is rare, which is why it is powerful. Power here does not mean control over others. It means control over direction. Direction determines trajectory. Trajectories are shaped early. Early clarity prevents prolonged misalignment. This prevention saves time and effort. Effort saved can be redirected. Redirection increases effectiveness. Effectiveness compounds advantage. This compounding is why those who ask clearly seem to move faster with less effort. They are not expending energy managing ambiguity. They are responding to defined outcomes. Defined outcomes are easier to manage. They require fewer internal resources. This efficiency is invisible but decisive. Clear requests also signal self-respect. Self-respect is not stated. It is inferred from behavior. Behavior that respects itself does not beg, hedge, or over-explain. It states intent and accepts consequence. This acceptance is what earns respect externally. External respect often follows internal consistency. Consistency emerges when requests align with values. Misaligned requests feel unstable. Stability matters. Stable requests are easier to respond to. Unstable requests invite delay. Outcomes obey stability because stability reduces risk. Risk assessment is constant in every interaction. Clear requests lower perceived risk by removing ambiguity. This is why clarity is often mistaken for confidence. Confidence may be present, but it is not required. Clarity stands on its own. A clear request from a calm position carries authority regardless of emotional state. This authority is quiet. It does not seek validation. Seeking validation contaminates requests. It introduces emotional dependency. Dependency weakens positioning. Clear requests are independent of outcome. They do not collapse when refused. This independence is felt immediately. Felt independence changes how responses are delivered. Responses become more direct. Direct responses accelerate learning. Learning sharpens future requests. This feedback loop is central to mastery. Mastery is not theoretical. Mastery emerges through repeated exposure to consequence. Avoiding asking avoids consequence. Avoiding consequence prevents mastery. This is why many remain capable but unskilled in asking. They never allow feedback to shape refinement. Refinement requires friction. Clear requests generate useful friction. This friction sharpens judgment. Judgment improves timing. Timing enhances authority. Authority amplifies outcomes. This cycle defines the unspoken advantage. Outcomes obey clear requests because clear requests impose structure on reality. Structure invites response. Response creates movement. Movement allows adjustment. Adjustment builds precision. Precision sustains advantage. This is the mechanism. It is not dramatic. It is reliable. The advantage grows through disciplined repetition, not intensity. Each request reinforces internal alignment. Alignment strengthens future clarity. Eventually, asking becomes natural, not forced. Natural does not mean casual. It means integrated. Integrated behavior does not hesitate. It does not rush either. It acts when alignment is present. This is the level where outcomes shift consistently, not through desire, through definition. This chapter establishes why clarity governs response. What follows will refine how to shape that clarity deliberately. The advantage now moves from understanding to application. Chapter 3, Asking is a positioning act. Every request places you somewhere. Not emotionally, not socially, but structurally. It establishes where you stand in relation to outcome, authority, and consequence. Most people misunderstand this because they believe asking is about communication. Communication is secondary. Positioning is primary. A request is not merely words delivered outward. It is an internal decision made visible. Once visible, it changes how situations organize around you. Positioning begins before the request is spoken. It begins the moment intent is finalized internally. If intent is unstable, the request cannot land cleanly. Unstable intent produces conditional language. Conditional language weakens positioning. Weak positioning invites delay, reinterpretation, or dismissal. This is why asking is not about courage. Courage addresses fear. Positioning addresses structure. A well-positioned request does not seek permission to exist. It presents itself as legitimate by default. Legitimacy is not granted externally. It is assumed internally. When legitimacy is assumed, tone changes without effort. Words become fewer. Explanations disappear. Explanation is often mistaken for clarity. In reality, explanation usually signals unresolved internal negotiation. Positioning requires that negotiation be finished before speech. Once negotiation is finished internally, the request becomes simple. Simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is compression of certainty. Compression gives weight. Weight is felt even when the request is refused. Refusal does not erase positioning if the request was complete. This is where many lose position without realizing it. They attach their sense of standing to the response rather than the act. Position is established by asking, not by receiving. Receiving is outcome. Positioning is identity. Identity persists regardless of outcome. Those who understand this ask differently. They do not perform the request. They place it. Placement implies that the request belongs where it is delivered. It is not an intrusion. It is a declaration of relevance. Relevance is not something to wait for. It is something to assert through clarity. Asking is how relevance is asserted cleanly. Many attempt to position themselves through effort alone. Effort without articulation remains invisible. Invisible effort produces no leverage. Leverage arises when intent is stated and consequences are accepted. Acceptance of consequence is what stabilizes position. Without acceptance, asking becomes tentative. Tentative requests shift power outward. They invite evaluation rather than engagement. Engagement only occurs when position is stable. Stability does not come from certainty of success. It comes from certainty of self-alignment. Self-alignment is knowing that the request reflects intention accurately. When a request reflects intention accurately, it no longer needs support. No emotional framing is required. No urgency needs to be injected. Urgency often appears when position is weak. Weak position tries to compensate through intensity. Strong position remains calm. Calm is not emotional detachment. It is structural completeness. Completeness communicates that nothing is missing. When nothing is missing internally, nothing needs to be added externally. The request stands on its own. This is how positioning becomes visible. Those who overask often believe repetition increases likelihood. In reality, repetition without refinement signals instability. Instability erodes position. Position is preserved through restraint. Restraint signals confidence in placement. It communicates that the request does not require reinforcement. This is why a single well-placed request carries more weight than repeated appeals. Weight comes from finality. Finality implies that the request was deliberate. Deliberateness separates asking from impulse. Impulse asks, seek relief. Positioned asks, seek outcome. Relief-driven requests collapse when unmet. Outcome-driven requests remain intact regardless of response. This difference is immediately felt. Positioned asking changes how others respond, even unconsciously. Responses become more direct. Ambiguity decreases. Direct responses accelerate resolution. Resolution saves time. Time saved compounds advantage. This is one of the least discussed effects of proper positioning. It improves efficiency across interactions. Efficiency is often mistaken for luck. Those who move quickly are rarely rushing. They are simply not managing ambiguity. Asking cleanly removes ambiguity early. Positioning also determines boundaries. A clear request implies what is not being requested. These implied limits protect authority. When everything is open, nothing is respected. When boundaries exist, engagement becomes focused. Focused engagement produces outcomes. Many lose position by asking before alignment is complete. Incomplete alignment leaks through tone, phrasing, and pacing. These leaks are subtle but decisive. A refined asker waits until alignment is settled. Waiting here is not hesitation. It is preparation of structure. Once her structure is prepared, delay becomes unnecessary. The request is placed promptly and without drama. Drama undermines position. Position thrives on neutrality of delivery. Neutral does not mean passive. It means unaffected by anticipated response. Anticipation often corrupts positioning. It causes overadjustment. Overadjustment introduces weakness. Weakness here is not personal. It is structural. It signals that the request is still being negotiated internally. Negotiation must end before asking begins. Otherwise, the request invites negotiation externally. External negotiation shifts control away. Control is not dominance. It is authorship of direction. Asking establishes authorship when done correctly. Authorship means owning the request regardless of outcome. Ownership prevents collapse under refusal. Collapse destroys position permanently. This is why rejection is not the real risk. The real risk is self-abandonment after asking. Self-abandonment teaches the wrong lesson. A refused request that is held with composure strengthens position. It communicates resilience without display. This resilience is remembered. Memory matters. Position is cumulative. Each interaction builds or erodes it. Those who consistently ask with clarity develop a reputation without trying. That reputation is reliability of intent. Reliability attracts engagement. Engagement creates access. Access creates opportunity. Opportunity responds to position, not hope. Many believe asking puts them at the mercy of others. In reality, asking cleanly places others at a decision point. Decision points shift dynamics. When others must decide, power is redistributed. Avoiding asking leaves power diffused and unmanaged. Managed power favors those who ask. This does not mean asking constantly. Constant asking weakens position. Position is strengthened by selectivity. Selectivity signals discernment. Discernment implies judgment. Judgment commands respect. Respect is not demanded. It is inferred from behavior. Asking well is one of the strongest behavioral signals. This chapter establishes that asking is not a request for approval. It is an act of placement. Placement determines trajectory. Trajectory determines long-term outcomes more than intensity ever could. Those who understand this stop waiting to be chosen. They choose themselves through articulation. This is the unspoken advantage in action, not louder effort. Clearer position. Chapter 4. The cost of waiting to be chosen. Waiting to be chosen feels controlled, yet it quietly transfers authority away from the one waiting. It appears patient, measured, and reasonable, while steadily reducing influence over outcome. This cost is rarely noticed because it accumulates gradually rather than arriving as a single failure. Being chosen implies that relevance will be assigned externally. This belief places outcomes at the mercy of perception, timing, and Curian preference. Perception, timing, and preference are unreliable currencies for progress. Those who wait often believe readiness will eventually be recognized. Recognition does not operate on readiness alone. It operates on visibility combined with clarity. Clarity requires articulation. Articulation requires asking. Waiting avoids both while maintaining the illusion of dignity. Dignity is not preserved through inaction. It is preserved through self-authorship. Self-authorship begins with declaring intent rather than concealing it. When intent remains concealed, others fill the gap with assumptions. Assumptions rarely favor the unexpressed. They favor what is visible, repeated, and asserted. Waiting trains dependence on external validation. Each delay reinforces the belief that permission must precede action. This belief weakens internal authority over time. Authority that depends on permission is fragile. It collapses under uncertainty. Asking builds authority because it removes permission from the equation. Waiting also distorts timing. Opportunities respond to momentum, not patience. Momentum requires movement, and movement begins with articulation. Those who wait often miss optimal windows, not because they arrive late, but because they never entered. Entry requires an explicit request. Without entry, timing becomes irrelevant. Waiting also introduces narrative drift. Stories form in the absence of clarity. These stories rarely align with unspoken intent. Narrative drift positions the unspoken as peripheral. Peripheral positions receive peripheral outcomes. Asking recenters position immediately. The cost of waiting is not always visible as loss. More often, it appears as stagnation disguised as stability. Stability without growth quietly becomes confinement. Confinement feels safe because boundaries are familiar. Familiarity is mistaken for security. Security without expansion leads to decay of leverage. Leverage depends on options. Options require engagement. Engagement begins with asking. Waiting reduces options by default. Unclaimed options expire without resistance. Expiration feels natural, yet it is entirely preventable. Those who wait often believe asking too early would have been inappropriate. In reality, asking earlier often provides information that refines timing. Information arrives only after engagement. Waiting delays information. Delayed information delays adjustment. Delayed adjustment prolongs inefficiency. Efficiency is not speed. It is alignment between effort and direction. Waiting disrupts this alignment by postponing direction setting. Another hidden cost of waiting is role assignment. Roles are assigned by behavior, not intention. Those who do not ask are assigned roles of support rather than direction. Support roles are not inferior, but they are limiting when chosen unintentionally. Unintentional roles harden over time. Once hardened, repositioning becomes more difficult. Asking early prevents role misassignment. It clarifies how participation is intended. This clarity protects future leverage. Waiting also alters self-perception. Each unmade request reinforces hesitation as normal behavior. Normalization shapes identity subtly. Identity formed through waiting becomes cautious by default. Caution becomes reflexive rather than strategic. Strategic restraint is deliberate. Reflexive restraint is automatic. Automatic restraint prevents assertion even when conditions are favorable. This is how capable individuals remain unseen despite competence. Visibility requires declaration. Declaration does not guarantee acceptance. It guarantees placement. Placement is what waiting avoids. Waiting also shifts accountability outward. Outcomes are attributed to circumstance rather than decision. This attribution weakens learning. Learning requires traceability between action and outcome. Waiting produces no action to evaluate. Without evaluation, refinement cannot occur. Refinement is central to mastery of asking. Mastery cannot develop in the absence of consequence. Waiting avoids consequence entirely. The longer waiting persists, the more costly asking appears. Delayed asking feels heavier than early asking because stakes have accumulated. Accumulated stakes intensify hesitation. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. Waiting increases perceived risk. Increased perceived risk justifies further waiting. Breaking this loop requires a deliberate shift. The shift is choosing placement over permission. Placement restores agency immediately. Agency does not require certainty of success. It requires certainty of intent. Intent must be expressed to function. Waiting also undermines credibility over time. Those who are always ready but never asking become predictable. Predictability without assertion diminishes influence. Influence grows through visible initiative. Initiative is not activity. It is direction-setting behavior. Asking sets direction publicly. Public direction invites response. Response creates engagement. Engagement resets dynamics. Dynamics favor those who initiate rather than react. Waiting locks behavior into reaction mode. Reaction mode places others in control of pacing. Pacing determines opportunity flow. Controlling pacing increases leverage. Waiting surrenders pacing completely. Surrendered pacing results in missed alignment. Alignment windows do not announce themselves repeatedly. Many opportunities are singular. They appear once and move on. Waiting assumes repetition where none is guaranteed. Asking captures opportunity while it exists. Even refusal captures information. Information refines future positioning. Waiting captures nothing. It preserves uncertainty while opportunity dissolves. This is the true cost. Those who wait often rationalize patience as wisdom. Wisdom without action produces no outcome. Wisdom must be applied to be effective. Application requires exposure. Exposure requires asking. Avoiding exposure avoids growth. Growth demands engagement with consequence. Consequence clarifies capability and limits. Clarity strengthens future requests. Waiting delays this entire process. Delay compounds inefficiency. Inefficiency drains momentum quietly. Momentum once lost is harder to rebuild than it is to maintain. Asking early preserves momentum. Waiting interrupts it. The unspoken advantage lies in understanding this cost clearly. It is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Those who ask do not wait for perfect conditions. They act when alignment is sufficient. Sufficient alignment is enough. Perfection is not required for asking. Completion is. Completion means the decision has already been made internally. Waiting often masquerades as seeking completion. In truth, it often delays commitment. Commitment clarifies direction. Direction attracts response. Response creates reality. Reality refines asking further. This cycle never begins for those who wait. Waiting suspends the cycle indefinitely. Suspension preserves potential while eliminating progress. Claiming the unspoken advantage requires ending the habit of waiting to be chosen. Choosing to ask is choosing authorship. Authorship changes trajectory immediately. The cost of waiting is now visible. What follows is learning how to replace waiting with clarity without becoming impulsive or excessive. That discipline is what sustains advantage over time. Chapter 5, Clarity Beats Confidence. Confidence has been given credit for outcomes it does not reliably produce. It has been praised, pursued, and exaggerated while the real mechanism of progress remained overlooked. That mechanism is clarity. Confidence fluctuates with mood, circumstance, and feedback. Clarity remains stable because it is structural rather than emotional. This stability is why clarity consistently outperforms confidence in shaping outcomes. Many delay asking because they do not feel confident enough yet. This delay assumes confidence must precede action. In practice, clarity precedes action, and confidence follows execution. Waiting for confidence reverses the natural order of progress. Progress begins with definition, not emotion. Definition establishes what is being pursued and what will be accepted as outcome. Clarity answers 3 questions internally before any request is made. What is being asked? Why it matters? What happens if the answer is no? When these questions are settled internally, confidence becomes irrelevant. The request no longer depends on emotional reinforcement. It stands on internal resolution alone. Confidence often attempts to compensate for unclear intent. This compensation appears as excessive energy, persuasion, or justification. These behaviors weaken requests by signaling instability beneath the surface. A clear request does not persuade. It presents. Presentation invites response without pressure. Pressure is introduced when clarity is incomplete. Incomplete clarity creates the need to convince. Convincing shifts focus from outcome to approval. Approval seeking contaminates asking. It introduces emotional dependency. Dependency weakens authority even when the request itself is reasonable. Clarity removes dependency because the request is already validated internally. Validation does not come from agreement. It comes from alignment. Alignment means the request accurately reflects intention and boundary. When alignment is present, tone stabilizes naturally. No performance is required. This is why calm requests often carry more weight than energetic ones. Calm suggests completion. Completion signals seriousness. Seriousness is respected even when refused. Confidence without clarity often collapses under refusal. Clarity remains intact regardless of response. This distinction matters because asking is not a single event. It is a repeated behavior that shapes identity. Identity stabilizes through clarity, not confidence. Those who rely on confidence experience inconsistency. Some days feel ready, others do not. Clarity removes this variability by anchoring behavior to decision rather than feeling. Decision does not require emotional readiness. It requires internal agreement. Agreement creates consistency. Consistency builds trust over time. Trust increases engagement. Engagement expands opportunity. Confidence alone does not produce this chain reaction. It may initiate action, but it does not sustain refinement. Refinement requires feedback, and feedback requires clarity. Unclear requests produce unclear feedback. Unclear feedback cannot refine behavior. This is why some repeat the same asking mistakes for years. Clarity sharpens feedback because it isolates variables. When a request is precise, the response reveals exactly what was accepted or rejected. This specificity accelerates learning. Learning improves future requests. Improved requests strengthen positioning. Positioning compounds advantage. Confidence does not compound reliably. It spikes and fades. Clarity compounds because it is cumulative. Each clear request builds internal reference points. These reference points guide future behavior. Over time, asking becomes disciplined rather than emotional. Many confuse clarity with rigidity. Rigidity resists adjustment. Clarity invites it. A clear request can be adjusted intelligently because its core is defined. An unclear request collapses under adjustment because it has no center. This center is what clarity provides. Confidence often resists adjustment because it is tied to self-image. When a confident request is refused, identity feels threatened. Clarity separates identity from outcome. Separation preserves composure. Composure maintains position. Position influences future responses. This is why clarity creates resilience without effort. Resilience emerges naturally when outcome does not define self-worth. Self-worth anchored in clarity is stable. Asking becomes easier when clarity replaces confidence as the standard. Easier does not mean careless. It means repeatable. Repeatability is critical for mastery. Mastery requires consistent behavior under varying conditions. Clarity enables this consistency. Confidence cannot be summoned on demand. Clarity can be established deliberately. This is a crucial distinction. Establishing clarity is a process. It involves deciding what matters and what does not. This decision removes noise. Noise complicates asking. Complication invites hesitation. Hesitation delays action. Clarity simplifies asking by reducing options. Reduced options accelerate decision-making. Faster decisions increase responsiveness. Responsiveness is often mistaken for confidence. In reality, it is clarity in motion. Those who respond quickly usually decided earlier. Early decision-making frees mental resources. Freed resources improve execution. Execution reinforces clarity further. This loop strengthens the unspoken advantage. It operates quietly, without emotional display. Its effects are visible through outcomes rather than posture. Clarity also governs when not to ask. Confidence often pushes assertion beyond necessity. Clarity recognizes sufficiency. Knowing when not to ask preserves authority. Excessive asking erodes weight. Weight is preserved through selectivity. Selectivity requires clarity of priorities. Without clarity, everything feels urgent. Urgency leads to overasking. Overasking signals instability. Instability weakens position. Clarity prevents this spiral. A clear framework allows restraint without self-denial. Restraint becomes strategic rather than fearful. Strategic restraint strengthens future requests. Confidence does not teach restraint. It often encourages persistence beyond effectiveness. Clarity recognizes diminishing returns. Recognizing diminishing returns is a mark of refinement. Refinement distinguishes influence from noise. Influence responds to clarity. Clarity also sharpens language. Clear thinking produces concise phrasing. Concise phrasing reduces misinterpretation. Misinterpretation creates friction. Friction slows outcomes. Clarity smooths interaction. This does not mean clarity eliminates resistance. It ensures resistance is honest. Honest resistance is useful. Useful resistance provides data. Data improves strategy. Strategy refines timing. Timing amplifies impact. Impact validates clarity. This is how the advantage compounds. Confidence seeks affirmation. Clarity seeks alignment. Alignment produces durable results. Those who prioritize clarity do not wait to feel ready. They act when alignment is achieved. Alignment is quieter than confidence, but far more reliable. This reliability builds self-trust. Self-trust reduces hesitation. Reduced hesitation increases decisiveness. Decisiveness sharpens asking. Sharp asking reshapes interactions. Reshaped interactions create access. Access is rarely granted to those who appear uncertain about what they want. Clarity removes that uncertainty. Removal of uncertainty invites engagement. Engagement opens doors. Doors open more readily to those who articulate direction. Direction emerges from clarity, not confidence. This chapter establishes a permanent shift. Confidence is optional. Clarity is essential. From this point forward, asking will be treated as a structured act, not an emotional one. What follows will deepen how clarity is translated into language that carries authority without excess. This is where discipline begins to show in form, not feeling.
Chapter 6. How to Ask Without Explaining Yourself. Explanation is often mistaken for clarity. In reality, explanation usually appears when clarity has not been fully settled internally. When intent is complete, explanation becomes unnecessary. Most explanations are not offered for understanding. They are offered for protection. Protection from refusal, judgment, or misinterpretation. This protective instinct weakens asking immediately. It shifts the request from a declaration into a negotiation. Negotiation before response signals uncertainty about legitimacy. Legitimacy does not come from reasons. It comes from internal authorization. Once authorized internally, the request stands without support. Explaining oneself places the focus on justification rather than outcome. Justification invites evaluation of worthiness. Outcome-focused requests invite decision. Decision is what moves situations forward. Evaluation delays movement. Delay favors the status quo. When a request is explained, it opens multiple points of resistance. Each added reason becomes something that can be challenged, dismissed, or misunderstood. A simple request offers fewer points of friction. Friction increases cognitive load for the responder. Increased cognitive load encourages avoidance. Avoidance produces non-responses rather than refusals. Non-responses are the most damaging outcome. They provide no boundary, no data, and no resolution. Explanation increases the likelihood of this outcome. A clean request reduces cognitive load. It allows the responder to focus on one decision. This focus increases the probability of engagement. Many believe explanation demonstrates respect. In practice, clarity demonstrates respect more reliably. Respect comes from honoring the responder's capacity to decide without persuasion. Persuasion is often an attempt to control outcome indirectly. Indirect control erodes authority. Direct requests preserve it. Authority is communicated through restraint. Restraint is visible when only what is necessary is said. Excess language suggests excess doubt. Doubt may exist internally, but it must be resolved before asking. Unresolved doubt leaks through explanation. This leakage is felt even when words sound reasonable. Asking without explanation requires a completed internal process. This process involves accepting refusal as a legitimate outcome. Without this acceptance, explanation feels necessary. Acceptance of refusal stabilizes tone. Stable tone eliminates urgency. Urgency contaminates clarity. A request made without urgency feels grounded. Grounded requests are easier to respond to. They do not demand emotional energy from the responder. This is a critical distinction. Requests that demand emotional energy create resistance. Requests that demand only decision create engagement. Explanation often demands emotional energy. It asks the responder to care about reasons rather than evaluate outcomes. Caring is optional. Deciding is not. Clean asking respects this difference. It presents the request and leaves space. Space is part of authority. Many feel compelled to fill space after asking. They add context, background, or reassurance. This filling weakens the request. Silence after a request is not a problem to solve. It is a structural pause that allows gravity to work. Gravity requires space. Explaining eliminates space. Without space, gravity cannot act. The request becomes weightless. A weightless request feels optional. Optional requests are postponed or ignored. Weight comes from finality, not volume. Finality is communicated through brevity. Brevity signals that the request has already been considered fully. Consideration removes the need for elaboration. Those who explain often believe they are increasing fairness. In reality, fairness is increased when the request is clear and bounded. Boundaries protect both parties. Bounded requests define scope. Defined scope simplifies decision-making. Simplified decisions are more likely to be made. Explanation expands scope unnecessarily. Expanded scope complicates decisions. Complication invites delay. This is why over-explaining often results in stalled outcomes. The responder must now process context rather than intent. Intent should always come first. Intent expressed cleanly is difficult to misinterpret. Misinterpretation arises when multiple motives are introduced. Explanation introduces multiple motives unintentionally. A refined asker knows exactly what is being requested. This knowledge allows the request to be stated without defense. Defense implies attack where none exists. Defensive language triggers evaluation. Evaluation shifts power outward. Power should remain with the clarity of the request. Asking without explanation is not abrupt. It is complete. Completeness feels calm rather than aggressive. Aggression appears when explanation is removed without internal alignment. Alignment ensures tone remains neutral. Neutral tone preserves relationship while maintaining position. This balance is subtle and rare. It is learned through discipline rather than instinct. Discipline requires repeated restraint. Many fear that removing explanation will make them appear unreasonable. Reasonableness is inferred from consistency, not justification. Consistent behavior builds credibility over time. Credibility reduces the need for explanation. Those who are known for clarity are trusted to be deliberate. Trust simplifies future interactions. This is how asking becomes easier with practice, not because resistance disappears, but because structure improves. Improved structure carries requests further with less effort. Asking without explanation also trains self-respect. It reinforces the belief that intent does not require apology. Apology weakens positioning. Apologetic language reframes the request as a burden. Burden framing invites reluctance. Reluctance delays outcome. Clean requests frame asking as normal and appropriate. Normalcy reduces emotional charge. Reduced emotional charge increases objectivity. Objectivity improves responses. Objective responses provide useful feedback. Feedback refines future requests. This feedback loop is essential for mastery. Explanation interrupts the loop by distorting feedback. Distorted feedback misleads refinement. Refinement depends on accuracy. Accuracy requires clean input. Clean input is a clear, bounded request. This does not mean explanation is never appropriate. Explanation belongs after engagement, not before. Engagement must come first. Once engagement exists, explanation can clarify details. Before engagement, explanation weakens authority. Sequence matters. Many reverse the sequence. They explain first and hope for engagement later. This approach rarely succeeds. The disciplined approach is to ask first, then respond only if engagement occurs. This preserves leverage. Leverage is lost when everything is offered up front. Holding back is not manipulation. It is structure. Structure protects outcome. Outcome justifies asking. Justification should never precede asking. This chapter establishes a critical rule. Ask clearly, then stop. Stopping is not withdrawal. It is completion. Completion communicates confidence without display. The unspoken advantage strengthens when explanation is removed. Requests become lighter, faster, and more precise. Precision increases impact. Impact reinforces alignment. Alignment sustains discipline. Discipline defines authority. From here, the next refinement becomes timing. Knowing when to ask matters as much as knowing how. Timing is not intuition, it is pattern recognition. That pattern is addressed next. Chapter 7. Timing is part of the ask. Timing is not a secondary detail. It is not an accessory to the request. It is embedded within the request itself. A request made at the wrong moment is not neutral. It actively weakens position. It reframes legitimacy as inconvenience. Most failed requests are not rejected because of content. They fail because they arrive before readiness or after momentum has passed. Timing determines whether a request lands as alignment or disruption. Alignment invites consideration. Disruption invites avoidance. Avoidance often masquerades as delay. Delay is rarely about indecision. It is a signal that timing was misjudged. This misjudgment is costly. Those who misunderstand timing believe asking is about courage alone. Courage without timing is noise. Noise demands attention rather than decision. Decision emerges when conditions support it. Conditions are observable. They are not guessed. Asking at the right time requires awareness beyond personal urgency. Urgency narrows perception. Narrow perception produces premature action. Premature requests carry tension. That tension is felt immediately. It shifts the burden of readiness onto the responder. Burdened responders resist unconsciously. Resistance appears as vague responses or non-commitment. Non-commitment wastes opportunity. The disciplined asker removes urgency before asking. This removal creates internal stillness. Stillness improves timing, judgment. Timing improves when attention moves outward. Outward attention tracks signals. Signals indicate readiness or constraint. Readiness appears as openness, momentum, or unresolved demand. Constraint appears as distraction, saturation, or competing priorities. These are not hidden. They are ignored when focus remains internal. Internal focus prioritizes need over context. Context always determines outcome. Asking without regard for context treats the request as isolated. No request exists in isolation. Every request interacts with an environment. This environment includes emotional bandwidth, cognitive load, and current direction. Direction matters most. Requests aligned with direction feel natural. Requests against direction feel intrusive. Intrusion invites defense. Defense reduces cooperation. The disciplined asker studies direction before asking. Direction is visible through actions, not words. Words are unreliable indicators of readiness. Action reveals momentum. Momentum creates leverage. Leverage amplifies requests without additional effort. Asking when momentum exists feels supportive rather than demanding. Supportive requests are welcomed. Welcomed requests receive thoughtful responses. Thoughtful responses provide clarity. Clarity accelerates movement. Movement reinforces authority. Many wait too long, believing restraint equals wisdom. Excessive waiting dissolves relevance. Relevance is time-sensitive. Opportunities decay quietly. They do not announce expiration. Delay assumes permanence that does not exist. The correct window is often narrow. It opens briefly and closes without warning. Those who hesitate miss it entirely. Timing requires decisiveness informed by observation. Observation without action is incomplete. Action without observation is reckless. The balance between these defines mastery. Mastery is calm, not rushed. Calmness allows swift movement when needed. Asking at the right time feels effortless. Effortlessness is a signal of alignment. Alignment reduces resistance naturally. This does not guarantee acceptance. It guarantees respect. Respect preserves position even in refusal. Refusal at the right time still strengthens credibility. It shows discernment rather than desperation. Desperation is always mistimed. Desperation seeks relief rather than outcome. Relief-oriented asking feels heavy. Heavy requests are avoided. The disciplined asker never asks to relieve internal pressure. Internal pressure is resolved before engagement. Resolution produces steadiness. Steadiness sharpens timing awareness. Awareness detects subtle shifts. Subtle shifts indicate optimal moments. These moments often feel ordinary. They are not dramatic. They are quiet openings. Quiet openings are missed by those waiting for certainty. Certainty does not precede action. It follows commitment. The correct timing often appears as partial readiness. Partial readiness is sufficient. Total readiness is rare and unnecessary. Waiting for perfect conditions ensures inactivity. Inactivity erodes confidence and judgment. Eroded confidence delays future action. The disciplined approach accepts imperfection. It asks when enough alignment exists. Enough is determined by pattern, not feeling. Patterns repeat. Those who study them gain advantage. Advantage reduces effort. This is the unspoken advantage at work. It operates quietly through precision. Precision requires restraint and attention. Asking too early reveals impatience. Asking too late reveals fear. Both weaken position. Position is protected by timely assertion. Assertion does not mean insistence. It means presence. Presence is felt when the request fits the moment. Fit creates flow. Flow eases response. This applies across contexts. Professional, personal, and strategic interactions follow the same structure. Structure does not change with familiarity. Familiarity tempts casual timing. Casual timing reduces seriousness. Seriousness communicates value. Value determines priority. Priority determines response speed. Speed reveals engagement. Engagement is the goal of asking. Engagement precedes outcome. Outcome cannot be forced. Forcing timing is self-sabotage. It confuses action with progress. Progress requires alignment. The disciplined asker waits actively. Active waiting involves monitoring, adjusting, and preparing. Preparation ensures readiness when the window opens. Unprepared askers miss windows even when they appear. Hesitation replaces action. Hesitation reframes timing as uncertainty. Uncertainty invites delay. Delay closes windows. Closed windows require repositioning. Repositioning costs energy and credibility. Repeated repositioning signals instability. Instability weakens future requests. Thus, timing is cumulative. Each well-timed request improves future positioning. Each poorly timed request degrades it. This cumulative effect is often ignored. Requests are treated as isolated events. They are not. Every request builds or erodes a reputation for discernment. Discernment is valued implicitly. It increases trust without explanation. Trust expands tolerance. Tolerance widens timing windows. Wider windows increase opportunity. This positive cycle begins with restraint. Restraint is not hesitation. It is deliberate pacing. Pacing respects rhythm. Rhythm governs interaction. Ignoring rhythm creates friction. Friction slows everything. Slowness invites doubt. Doubt complicates future action. The disciplined asker simplifies by aligning with rhythm. Rhythm is sensed through attention, not force. Force disrupts rhythm. Thus, timing cannot be rushed. It must be observed, then acted upon decisively. Decisiveness completes the ask. Incomplete asks linger awkwardly. Lingering weakens clarity. Clarity demands completion. Completion occurs when the request is made fully and released. Release allows response. Response provides data. Data refines future timing. Refinement increases mastery. Mastery reduces effort further. This is how asking evolves from risk into leverage. Leverage depends on timing more than wording. Wording without timing is ineffective. This chapter establishes a non-negotiable principle. Timing is not optional. It is structural. The next refinement addresses boundaries. Knowing when not to ask is as critical as knowing when to ask. Discipline includes restraint at the correct moments. Chapter 8. Knowing when not to ask. Asking is power only when it is selective. Unrestricted asking dilutes authority. Authority depends on restraint. Restraint is often misunderstood as hesitation. Hesitation is rooted in doubt. Restraint is rooted in clarity. Clarity knows when a request would weaken position rather than strengthen it. This knowledge is not emotional. It is structural. Every request alters perception. It signals priority, confidence, and expectation. Too many signals create noise. Noise reduces significance. Significance requires scarcity. Scarcity is created through choice. Choosing not to ask is an act of positioning. It communicates self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency increases leverage. Those who ask indiscriminately appear dependent. Dependence shifts power outward. Power once shifted is difficult to reclaim. Knowing when not to ask preserves internal authority. Internal authority precedes external influence. Without it, requests feel misaligned. Misaligned requests often receive polite deflection. Deflection is not neutral. It weakens future consideration. Repeated deflection trains others to deprioritize engagement. This training occurs silently. Silence here is costly. The disciplined asker studies patterns of response. Patterns reveal tolerance thresholds. Thresholds indicate when asking should pause. Pausing is strategic. It allows recalibration. Recalibration restores balance. Balance prevents erosion of credibility. Credibility accumulates slowly and erodes quickly. Every unnecessary request accelerates erosion. Many over-ask due to internal pressure. Pressure seeks release. Asking becomes an outlet rather than a strategy. This misuse converts asking into coping. Coping does not produce outcomes. It produces temporary relief. Temporary relief is deceptive. It masks structural weakness. Weak structure collapses under repetition. The disciplined approach separates desire from action. Desire informs direction. Action follows structure. Structure determines timing, frequency, and necessity. Without structure, desire dictates behavior. Desire is volatile. Volatility introduces inconsistency. Inconsistency reduces trust. Trust governs access. Access is often mistaken for availability. Availability does not guarantee receptiveness. Receptiveness depends on respect. Respect grows when boundaries are honored. Boundaries include when not to ask. This signals discernment. Discernment elevates perception. Elevated perception increases influence. Influence reduces the need to ask frequently. This is the paradox. Asking less effectively yields more. Asking more indiscriminately yields less. The unspoken advantage emerges through this restraint. It is noticed subconsciously. People respond differently to those who choose carefully. Careful choosing implies options. Options imply independence. Independence commands respect. Respect shifts the dynamic. Requests are no longer evaluated as burdens. They are evaluated as opportunities. Opportunity framing changes responses. Responses become quicker and clearer. Clarity accelerates outcomes. Knowing when not to ask also protects self-respect. Repeated refusal damages internal alignment. Alignment sustains confidence. Confidence is not bravado. It is consistency between belief and behavior. Over-asking violates this consistency. Violation creates internal friction. Friction undermines clarity. Clarity is essential for precision. Precision defines effective asking. Imprecise frequency blurs intention. Blurred intention weakens positioning. The disciplined asker monitors frequency deliberately. Each request must justify its existence. Existence is justified by alignment, not urgency. Urgency distorts judgment. Distorted judgment misreads necessity. Misread necessity leads to unnecessary requests. Unnecessary requests train others to delay. Delay becomes habitual. Habitual delay erodes momentum. Momentum is fragile. It requires protection. Over-asking disrupts momentum. The decision not to ask preserves momentum for better moments. Better moments produce better outcomes. This requires patience without passivity. Passivity avoids action. Restraint prepares for action. The difference is intention. Intentional restraint feels active. It sharpens observation. Observation informs strategy. Strategy replaces impulse. Impulse leads to regret. Regret erodes confidence. Confidence, once eroded, leads to compensatory behavior. Compensatory behavior increases over-asking. This cycle must be broken. Breaking it requires discipline. Discipline enforces limits. Limits preserve authority. Authority is not declared. It is inferred. Inference depends on behavior patterns. Patterns of restraint stand out. They signal maturity. Maturity commands attention. Attention precedes engagement. Engagement precedes outcome. Outcome validates strategy. The disciplined asker understands that not every opportunity requires a request. Some opportunities require positioning instead. Positioning prepares the ground. Ground prepared yields stronger responses later. Immediate asking skips preparation. Skipping preparation reduces success probability. This chapter establishes a critical boundary. Asking is not constant. It is selective. Selection is based on alignment, timing, and leverage. Without leverage, asking should pause. Pause allows leverage to build. Leverage builds through contribution, consistency, and presence. Presence without asking is powerful. It communicates stability. Stability reassures others. Reassurance increases openness. Openness widens opportunity windows. Thus, restraint expands possibility rather than shrinking it. This expansion is counterintuitive, yet it is reliable. Knowing when not to ask also reduces emotional exposure. Exposure without readiness weakens resolve. Resolve is needed for bold requests. Boldness is not frequency. It is precision applied decisively. Precision requires restraint. This refinement separates disciplined askers from reactive ones. Reactive asking is driven by discomfort. Disciplined asking is driven by clarity. Clarity does not rush. It waits when needed. It acts when aligned. The unspoken advantage matures here. Asking becomes a tool, not a habit. Tools are used intentionally. This intentionality transforms outcomes. It replaces noise with signal. Signal commands response. The next chapter refines scale. Knowing how much to ask determines sustainability. Overreach collapses trust faster than underreach. Chapter 9. The Cost of Overasking. Overasking does not fail loudly. It fails quietly, through accumulation. Each unnecessary request deposits a small cost that compounds over time. This cost is rarely confronted directly. It appears as slower responses, shorter replies, and delayed decisions. These signals are often misread as external obstacles. They are internal consequences. They result from miscalibrated frequency. Frequency shapes perception more than intensity. Intensity attracts attention once. Frequency determines credibility over time. Credibility governs access. Access is not granted by boldness alone. It is preserved by restraint. Overasking consumes restraint until none remains. When restraint is gone, requests lose contrast. Without contrast, nothing stands out. What does not stand out is deprioritized. Deprioritization is subtle. It does not require refusal. It requires postponement. Postponement is the favored response to overasking. It avoids confrontation while preserving distance. Distance reduces engagement. Engagement declines before rejection appears. This sequence is predictable. It is also preventable. Most overasking originates from misunderstanding momentum. Momentum is mistaken for permission. Permission is assumed rather than verified. Assumed permission accelerates frequency. Accelerated frequency erodes discretion. Eroded discretion weakens authority. Authority depends on judgment. Judgment is inferred from behavior patterns. Patterns reveal whether asking is deliberate or reactive. Reactive asking follows emotion. Deliberate asking follows structure. Structure resists impulse. Impulse demands relief. Relief-seeking asks feel urgent. Urgency pressures the responder. Pressure changes the dynamic. It reframes the request as a problem to manage. Problems are minimized, not expanded. Minimization reduces outcome quality. Quality matters more than quantity. Overasking sacrifices quality for immediacy. Immediacy is deceptive. It promises speed, but delivers friction. Friction slows everything. The disciplined asker prioritizes sustainability. Sustainability preserves long-term leverage. Leverage amplifies future requests. Overasking spends leverage prematurely. Spent leverage cannot be reclaimed quickly. Rebuilding requires time and consistency. Consistency is incompatible with overasking. Overasking produces erratic behavior. Erratic behavior confuses expectations. Confused expectations lead to cautious responses. Caution manifests as delay. Delay compounds frustration. Frustration tempts increased frequency. Increased frequency worsens the problem. This cycle accelerates quietly. Breaking the cycle requires recognition. Recognition begins with ownership. Ownership removes blame from others. Blame obscures structural flaws. Structural flaws must be corrected internally. Correction restores alignment. Alignment reestablishes clarity around necessity. Necessity filters requests. Filtered requests regain weight. Weight is essential. A weightless request is easily ignored. Weight is created through selectivity. Selectivity signals value. Value attracts attention. Attention precedes engagement. Engagement precedes outcome. Outcome validates restraint. This loop reinforces discipline. Overasking also damages reputation. Reputation is not reputation for effort. It is reputation for discernment. Discernment is inferred when fewer requests produce stronger outcomes. Strong outcomes increase trust. Trust expands future opportunity. Overasking undermines trust indirectly. It suggests uncertainty about judgment. Uncertainty invites oversight. Oversight reduces autonomy. Reduced autonomy restricts scope. Restricted scope limits outcomes. Thus, over-asking shrinks the field of possibility. It narrows options. Narrow options increase dependency. Dependency shifts power outward. Power once shifted resists return. This is why calibration matters early. Calibration requires honest assessment. Assessment asks whether the request is necessary now. Now matters more than desire. Desire is constant. Timing is not. Frequency must respect timing. Respecting timing includes respecting saturation. Saturation occurs when attention is consumed. Consumed attention cannot be redirected easily. Requests made during saturation feel intrusive. Intrusion damages goodwill. Goodwill is difficult to rebuild. The disciplined asker monitors saturation signals. Signals include response length, response speed, and initiative. Initiative declining is a warning. When initiative declines, asking should pause. Pause is corrective. Correction prevents escalation. Many ignore these signals. They mistake silence for indecision. They respond with repetition. Repetition without change is over-asking. It irritates rather than persuades. Irritation reduces openness. Openness is the resource being consumed. Once depleted, outcomes collapse. This collapse feels sudden, but is cumulative. Over-asking also blurs boundaries. Boundaries protect both parties. Blurred boundaries invite discomfort. Discomfort reduces clarity. Clarity is required for decision. Without decision, progress halts. The disciplined approach treats each request as an investment. Investments are evaluated for return. Low return requests should be eliminated. Elimination is not self-denial. It is optimization. Optimization preserves strength. Strength supports boldness. Boldness without strength is reckless. Recklessness invites correction. Correction often arrives as refusal. Refusal after over-asking feels personal. Personalization clouds judgment. Clouded judgment leads to defensive behavior. Defense invites further resistance. This downward spiral is common. Avoidance is simpler. Avoidance begins with restraint. Restraint requires confidence. Confidence here is not certainty of outcome. It is certainty of self-governance. Self-governance stabilizes behavior. Stable behavior is trusted. Trust accelerates response. Accelerated response improves outcomes. This is why asking less often can produce faster results. The paradox is structural, not psychological. Structure always wins. The unspoken advantage becomes visible here. Those who ask rarely are taken seriously when they do. Seriousness amplifies impact. Impact does not require volume. It requires precision. Precision demands discipline. Discipline enforces limits. Limits preserve authority. Authority sustains influence. Influence reduces the need to ask repeatedly. Reduced frequency preserves leverage. Leverage compounds over time. Over-asking interrupts this compounding. It resets trust repeatedly. Repeated resets exhaust patience. Patience is finite. Once depleted, rebuilding takes longer than restraint ever would have. This cost is rarely calculated. The disciplined asker calculates it anyway. Calculation informs choice. Choice shapes behavior. Behavior becomes consistent. Consistency builds credibility. Credibility restores power. This chapter establishes a firm boundary. Asking must be calibrated. Calibration prevents erosion. Erosion is invisible until collapse. Collapse feels unfair, but is earned. Prevention is simpler than repair. Repair requires withdrawal. Withdrawal costs opportunity. Opportunity once missed rarely returns unchanged. Thus, restraint is not conservative. It is strategic. Strategy protects future capacity. Future capacity matters more than immediate relief. Relief fades quickly. Capacity endures. Endurance defines mastery. Mastery expresses itself through fewer, stronger requests. Strength is measured by response quality, not quantity. This understanding transforms behavior. Asking becomes deliberate. Deliberateness restores authority. The next refinement addresses escalation. Knowing how to increase the scope of a request without increasing frequency is essential. Escalation done correctly preserves respect. Chapter 10. Escalation without pressure. Escalation is not asking more often. It is asking for more without increasing demand. This distinction determines whether authority expands or collapses. Most people confuse escalation with insistence. Insistence applies pressure. Pressure signals insecurity. Insecurity invites resistance. Resistance narrows possibility. Escalation should widen it. True escalation operates through scope, not repetition. Repetition irritates attention. Scope engages consideration. Consideration produces meaningful decisions. Decisions advance outcomes. Outcomes justify escalation. Escalation without pressure begins with internal alignment. Alignment clarifies what is truly required next. Without clarity, escalation becomes greed. Greed is felt immediately. It destabilizes tone. Tone determines receptiveness. Receptiveness cannot be forced. It must be preserved. Preservation requires restraint. The disciplined asker escalates only when a foundation exists. Foundation is built through delivery, consistency, and reliability. Without foundation, escalation feels premature. Premature escalation reframes confidence as entitlement. Entitlement repels cooperation. Cooperation depends on mutual respect. Respect grows when escalation feels earned. Earned escalation aligns with demonstrated value. Value legitimizes increased scope. Scope refers to depth, responsibility, or commitment. It is not a demand for urgency. Urgency is the enemy of clean escalation. Urgent escalation feels like extraction. Extraction drains goodwill. Goodwill is a finite resource. Once goodwill is depleted, future escalation becomes impossible. This is why pressure is costly. Pressure trades long-term capacity for short-term movement. Short-term movement rarely sustains. Sustainability requires balance. Balance is maintained through proportional asking. Proportionality matches request size to established context. Context includes prior engagement, response quality, and trust level. Ignoring context creates imbalance. Imbalance triggers correction. Correction appears as refusal, delay, or disengagement. Disengagement ends opportunity. The disciplined approach escalates incrementally but decisively. Incremental does not mean timid. It means calibrated. Calibration depends on feedback. Feedback is gathered through response behavior, not words. Behavior reveals tolerance accurately. Escalation should follow demonstrated tolerance. When tolerance increases, scope may expand. When tolerance contracts, escalation must pause. Pausing is not retreat. It is consolidation. Consolidation stabilizes gains. Many attempt to escalate too quickly after initial success. Success creates momentum. Momentum tempts overreach. Overreach collapses trust faster than failure. Failure can be contextualized. Overreach signals poor judgment. Judgment is central to authority. Authority is granted based on trust in judgment. Escalation tests that trust. Passing the test requires subtlety. Subtle escalation feels natural. Natural progression is rarely resisted. Natural progression aligns with shared interests. Shared interests reduce friction. Friction is the indicator to slow down. The disciplined asker monitors friction closely. Increased friction means scope is expanding too fast. Fast expansion without alignment destabilizes structure. Structure must remain intact. Structure supports future asks. Without structure, escalation becomes chaotic. Chaotic escalation invites supervision. Supervision reduces autonomy. Autonomy enables larger scope. Thus, preserving autonomy is essential. Autonomy is preserved through disciplined escalation. Discipline signals readiness for responsibility. Responsibility legitimizes increased scope. Scope expands naturally when responsibility is proven. Proof precedes escalation. This is a non-negotiable sequence. Skipping steps undermines credibility. Credibility once lost is difficult to restore. Escalation without pressure also requires emotional neutrality. Emotional charge contaminates intent. Contaminated intent feels manipulative. Manipulation is sensed even when disguised. Sensed manipulation ends trust. Trust is the currency of escalation. Neutral escalation presents opportunity rather than demand. Opportunity framing invites collaboration. Collaboration strengthens outcomes. Demand framing invites compliance at best. Compliance is fragile. Fragility undermines sustainability. Sustainable outcomes require voluntary engagement. Voluntary engagement emerges from alignment, not pressure. Alignment must be visible. Visibility comes from consistency. Consistency builds predictability. Predictability creates safety. Safety allows larger asks to be considered. Without safety, escalation feels risky. Risk avoidance limits growth. The disciplined asker reduces perceived risk before escalating. Risk reduction is achieved through clarity and delivery. Delivery proves capability. Capability justifies trust. Trust allows expansion. Expansion must feel logical. Logic reassures decision makers. Reassurance reduces hesitation. Reduced hesitation accelerates approval. Escalation should never surprise. Surprise creates defensiveness. Defensiveness restricts openness. Preparation prevents surprise. Preparation includes signaling readiness subtly. Signals set expectation. Expectation primes acceptance. Primed acceptance feels seamless. Seamlessness is the goal. When escalation feels seamless, resistance disappears. Disappearance of resistance is not luck. It is structure at work. Many believe boldness requires abruptness. Abruptness is often impatience disguised as confidence. True boldness is calm. Calm escalation communicates certainty. Certainty stabilizes interactions. Stability supports growth. Growth through escalation should feel inevitable. Inevitability reduces debate. Debate delays outcomes. This does not eliminate negotiation. It changes its tone. Negotiation becomes refinement rather than resistance. Refinement improves outcome quality. Quality reinforces trust. Trust supports future escalation. This cycle compounds advantage. Advantage becomes unspoken. Unspoken advantage is rarely challenged. Challenged positions require defense. Defense consumes energy. Escalation should conserve energy. Conservation preserves clarity. Clarity sustains discipline. Discipline governs authority. Authority enables larger scope with fewer words. Fewer words reduce friction. Reduced friction increases success. This chapter establishes escalation as an art of proportion. Proportion aligns request size with established trust. Misaligned proportion collapses momentum. Escalation without pressure is not passive. It is assertive without force. Force corrupts asking. Asking must remain clean. Clean asking preserves structure. Structure enables expansion. Expansion without structure is chaos. Chaos erodes confidence. Confidence is required for bold requests. Bold requests must feel earned. Earned boldness commands respect. Respect accelerates response. This refinement transforms asking into strategy rather than impulse. Strategy produces consistency. Consistency produces authority. Authority reduces the need to push. Push invites resistance. Resistance limits growth. The disciplined asker never pushes. Expansion is invited through structure. Structure always outperforms force. The next chapter addresses refusal. Knowing how to handle rejection without retreat or escalation is essential. Refusal contains information when approached correctly. Chapter 11. When the answer is no, a refusal does not end the interaction. It completes one phase of it. What follows determines whether authority is preserved or diminished. Many interpret a no as a verdict on worth. This interpretation destabilizes behavior. Destabilized behavior weakens future positioning. A no is not personal. It is contextual. Context always matters more than intention. The disciplined asker understands this distinction fully. Understanding prevents reaction. Reaction corrupts clarity. Clarity must remain intact after refusal. Intact clarity allows accurate interpretation. Interpretation determines next steps. Most damage occurs after the no, not during it. The immediate response reveals internal alignment. Alignment governs authority. Defensive responses expose attachment. Attachment signals dependency. Dependency shifts power outward. Conversely, calm reception signals autonomy. Autonomy stabilizes perception. Stable perception preserves respect. Respect is essential even in refusal. It keeps future access open. Access should never be burned impulsively. Those who respond poorly to refusal often escalate emotionally. Emotional escalation pressures the responder. Pressure damages trust. Trust, once damaged, cannot be restored through explanation. It requires time and consistency. Time is costly. The disciplined approach treats refusal as data. Data informs strategy. Strategy replaces impulse. Every refusal contains information about timing, scope, or readiness. Ignoring this information guarantees repetition of failure. Learning from it refines precision. Precision is the goal of asking. Precision reduces wasted effort. Wasted effort drains authority. When a no is received, the first discipline is containment. Containment means no immediate adjustment. Adjustment without analysis is reaction. Reaction exposes need. Need contaminates posture. Posture influences perception. Perception shapes future responses. Poor posture after refusal lingers. Lingering impressions are difficult to correct. Thus, restraint after refusal is critical. Restraint signals strength. Strength reassures others. Reassurance keeps the channel intact. Intact channels enable future opportunities. Opportunities often arrive indirectly. Many lose opportunities by reacting poorly to refusal. They demand justification. They attempt persuasion. Persuasion after refusal appears desperate. Desperation invites disengagement. Disengagement ends dialogue. The disciplined asker does not argue with a no. Argument reframes refusal as conflict. Conflict hardens positions. Hardened positions rarely soften quickly. Time is required. Time favors those who remain composed. Composure is a signal. It communicates maturity and self-command. Self-command elevates standing. Standing matters more than immediate outcome. Standing determines future influence. Influence compounds quietly. Receiving refusal without friction preserves standing. Preserved standing increases likelihood of future yes. This is rarely acknowledged, but consistently true. The next step after refusal is assessment. Assessment asks what condition was unmet. Unmet conditions guide refinement. Refinement may involve timing, scope, or framing. It may also involve capacity. Capacity cannot be negotiated. Attempting to negotiate capacity appears oblivious. Obliviousness undermines credibility. Credibility is fragile here. Sometimes refusal indicates misalignment of priorities. Priorities shift. Shifts require patience. Patience is not passivity. It is strategic waiting, informed by data. Waiting without data is avoidance. The disciplined asker distinguishes between the two. Data-based waiting feels purposeful. Purpose sustains discipline. Another critical discipline is not filling the space after a no. Silence after refusal is powerful. It allows recalibration on both sides. Filling the space with justification weakens position. Weak position invites further resistance. Resistance closes options. Allowing the refusal to stand communicates respect. Respect preserves rapport. Rapport enables re-entry later. Re-entry should never be immediate. Immediate re-entry signals inability to accept boundaries. Boundary violations reduce trust. Trust once reduced limits scope permanently. Permanent limitation is costly. Avoiding it requires discipline. The disciplined asker also resists self-punishment after refusal. Self-punishment distorts learning. Learning requires neutrality. Neutrality maintains objectivity. Objectivity extracts value from outcome regardless of direction. Value extraction is the mark of mastery. Mastery is measured by response quality, not success rate. Success rate improves naturally when response quality is high. Quality compounds over time. Those who internalize refusal incorrectly shrink future asks. Shrinking is not refinement. It is retreat. Retreat weakens authority as much as overreach. Balance is required. Balance is learned through repetition. The disciplined asker continues to ask boldly after refusal. Boldness is not erased by a no. It is recalibrated. Recalibration preserves confidence. Confidence stabilizes posture. Posture influences outcomes. The unspoken advantage matures here. Those who handle refusal well are trusted with larger scope later. This trust is rarely verbalized. It is inferred through behavior. Inference governs access. Access determines opportunity. Opportunity often returns in different form. Rigid fixation misses it. Flexibility captures it. Flexibility does not mean compromise of standards. It means adaptability in approach. Approach can change without weakening intent. Intent must remain firm. Firm intent anchors authority. Authority reassures decision makers. Decision makers prefer those who do not react emotionally. Emotional volatility signals risk. Risk is avoided. Thus, calm reception of refusal reduces perceived risk. Reduced risk increases future openness. Openness widens possibility. This is why refusal should be welcomed internally. It clarifies boundaries. Boundaries guide strategy. The disciplined asker records refusals mentally without judgment. Judgment distorts analysis. Analysis must remain clean. Clean analysis informs future timing and scope. Informed adjustments increase effectiveness. Effectiveness reinforces confidence. Confidence supports restraint. Restraint preserves authority. Authority amplifies asking. This chapter establishes a critical mindset. No is not an end point. It is a signal. Signals are valuable. Those who rid them gain advantage. Advantage compounds quietly. The unspoken advantage is reinforced here. It is not diminished by refusal. It is refined by it. The next chapter addresses persistence. Persistence without pressure requires discipline. Knowing when to re-engage is essential.